Hey guys, Phalaris here with a jungle clear guide for Hecarim in Season 13. This video will include both his red side and blue side jungle starts. Before I begin, I'd like to take a moment to thank the sponsor of this video, Poro. I rarely take sponsorships on my videos, as I don't believe in recommending products that I wouldn't use, but I've used Poro for a pretty long time, as it's genuinely just a really helpful tool for junglers. You've probably seen it on my minimap in many of my videos. It simply adds a timer overlay whenever you see a camp being taken, so that you know exactly when it'll come back up. Now, a good jungler should be tracking this regardless, but League is a very hectic game, and having camp timers tracked automatically allows you to focus on your decision making instead. There's also a manual tracker for summoner spell timers, as well as various stats that you can pull up if you want to. Anything you don't want to see, you can simply disable to keep your overlay clean. It's completely free, so if you want to check it out, there's a link in the video description below. Open on red buff with an auto Q. Hecarim can start on Raptors if you want to play for your Raptor Krug respawn timers, but he does have pretty solid gank potential at level 4, so I prefer just starting on the buff most of the time. But if you have very passive side laners and know you probably won't find a gank, then I recommend starting with Raptors into Krugs instead. Now, Hecarim's clearing is pretty straightforward. The main thing to keep in mind is how you balance his auto attacks and Qs. Hecarim cannot Q and auto simultaneously. He needs to use one of them first. So either Q auto or auto Q. Because the cooldown on your Q and the delay on your auto attacks won't line up perfectly, there isn't some clean pattern that you can repeat like Q auto, Q auto, Q auto. Instead, you simply want to use whichever one comes off cooldown first. So sometimes you'll Q auto, and sometimes you'll auto Q. This way you can squeeze out the maximum possible DPS. Later on in the game, once you have more points in your Q, you do tend to prioritize just using your Q off cooldown, even if it means delaying some autos, because at max rank your Qs will do much more damage than your auto attacks. But early in the game, they do about the same amount of damage, so we just want to prioritize whichever one comes up first. Now, after Wolves, you have a choice of heading to Blue or Gromp. If you go for Gromp first, your respawn timers will be a little bit better. But if you went leashless and are low on mana, it can be nice to do Blue first to get the regen right away. Now, there's not so much we can do as far as double camping goes anymore, but you can always transition between camps with a quick double camp Q. It's not a huge deal, but it does still save a little bit of time. Do keep in mind that after Gromp, you can sometimes actually just go straight into lane from tower to pull off a quick lane gank while your Q is still stacked, if the conditions are appropriate. You don't always have to run through river. For Hecarim's blue start, open with an auto Q and lightly kite towards Gromp. Make sure you don't pull too far. The leash range indicator for blue buff is a little bit deceiving. It's really easy to accidentally pull the camp out of its patience range, so don't try too hard to min-max, just play it safe and avoid any accidents. You can finish the blue with a double camp Q and kite the Gromp out. Pay attention to how I balance my Qs and autos on the Gromp. I always try to prioritize the one that comes off cooldown first. Now, don't use your W when it comes back up, just save it for the Wolves. If you use your W to finish the Gromp, most of the duration will get wasted out, and using W off cooldown at the end of Wolves will mean it's not up in time for you to open on Raptors with. Watch how I kite the Wolves here. I kite diagonally downwards to leave a little bit of a gap by the wall so that the Wolves don't get stuck in the pit. It's very common for the big wolf to get body blocked by the little wolves and get stuck if you try to kite right by the wall. When entering Raptors, you can hover by the wall and use your W to aggro them over it, but it's not that big of a deal, it doesn't save that much time. Make sure you keep the Raptors in patience range until the big Raptor can be killed in one Q, then head down to auto Q the red buff. The Q will always hit the Raptor, but if this seems a bit too sketchy for you, just auto the big Raptor one extra time. As with the red start clear, we do have the option of heading to Krugs before red for better linear respawns. This also tends to be a really good option if you know the enemy side laners have already warded the Tribush, as pathing from Raptors to Krugs to red will allow you to either enter river from the mid entrance, or simply reverse to the opposite Scuttle Crab. That's all for this video. If you enjoyed the content, feel free to like and subscribe. I want to give a big thank you to my patrons for supporting me all this time. It's super appreciated.